determine exactly who's in what role and for them to excel in. Now Xavier swapping onto more than likely what they'll actually be running.
And then you have it, Sabagod as well. Very confident on either the Zenyatta or the Ana, so we'll see if he sticks on the Zenyatta after he sees the Sombra there, because you do have the option of swapping.
Honestly, I think they're expecting there won't be a Sombra, that's why they're starting Zen first, but once they see this one, they probably want to get quite aggressive, Jupiter.
Rotating onto the point first. Should have by now done the math and realized, only 5 members of Xavier. There's probably a Sombra behind us. They are aware of it, trying to spy check a bit.
Well, you don't want to spend too long because the problem is Xavier's already on the point. The point's about to unlock and Jupiter can't wait for themselves to be hacked up.
Alone Phils hasn't done too much in terms of spam damage, though. He's only really getting into the thick of it now, and Jupiter just muscled forward here. Queen really takes some pain, but Doodoo is going to go down first, unfortunately, in that trade. Cap does go the way of Jupiter, though, surprisingly, but they're definitely the worst for wear in this fight, and this is also where Alone Phils can start to be unlocked a little bit, start charging up the EMP as they get the Cap back.
And honestly, Jupiter did really good opening damage here, but they lost their main tank so early, and now would be lucky to not lose anybody else. EMP's nearly available. Xavier so far in the lead.
That's a really tough one as well, just as they were trying to push back against Xavier. But it's really just how the opening skirmish went as well. They push, they do a lot of work, they make good ground, but they lose a member. And they're sticking in this fight with the Transcendence. They've decided they want to go all in. Xavier are going to start throwing some ultimates into the mix, and I think rightfully so. They've got far more to play with. If they can preserve an EMP, having got that Transcendence out of Sabagod, and that is huge for Xavier.
And they were maybe even to looking at Claire thinking, okay, is he going to use a sound barrier here? We've grabbed them up. If he uses that one, we can either EMP to secure the win or make sure that both support ultimates are gone. Alone Phil's on 100 killer mode is going to make sure Sabagod is going to spend a little bit more time respawning in. So far, you got to say for Jupiter, it's been a pretty poor start over the course of the entire round.
Yeah, Xavier just looks super comfortable dealing with the attempted aggression, I should say, out of Jupiter.
The amount of options available is still quite staggering. Once Pinky drops the Graviton Surge, both support ultimates available, and that's assuming Jupiter even get to pull the trigger first. Likely what will happen is Xavier walk in with the EMP.
There it is. Nice answer with the sound barrier, though. Good positioning from Claire, and finding Bello despite the Transcendence is pretty nice. But again, Doodoo goes down, and adds... I mean, the Reinhardt is something you want to keep alive, right? Fighting Alone Phils, though. Oh, but Hengi getting picked, and again, 2 tanks going down with ultimates available. They aren't able to commit, even though they're starting to get more kills here. If nothing else, Xavier will be able to extend this fight. Best case scenario, they could still turn it around with their own grab here. Sabagod's got an answer. Jupiter pick up Queen, and those respawners are starting to come in. So Jupiter kind of getting away with some very, very dicey trades there.
I think with Jupiter as well, they could have reset, but they decided not to. It ends up paying off for them. They still have ultimates to play with. Now we're going to be ticking up to 97% before we finally get the flip over for the side of Jupiter. Looking at the 4 ultimates they do have, they can snowball this one a little bit further, and they're going to need to win every single fight from here on to actually take the round.
Got a lot to work with. You're dead right about that. All it really takes is one EMP, right? So actually, the question will be, how do they survive the EMP fight? Right now, Alone Phils leads both supports of Jupiter in terms of ultimate charge.
So timing is important. If they can just win this fight with the grab and some other ultimates, EMP won't be available.
Nice and quick, relatively clean. Doodoo took a bit of time to follow up, was unfortunately bumped off to the side, but they're still able to get the kills they need. Only lose Ken Mohororo. Shadow a little bit ski whiff, goes straight into the shield. Still they get THK. They're getting the damage in, and Alone Phils has just about charged up their EMP, but in that fight, Jupiter were able to get Sabagod's Transcendence.
And that's important because winning this fight allows your supports in your other place to charge up those missing ultimates, which then allows them to counter out the EMP, which will come in the next engagement. And this is the kind of momentum that Jupiter need to be able to push through with on this defense, on this point, to continue racking up the percentage points to get themselves to the 99% overtime and threaten to take the round.
It's because THK doesn't quite have a grab yet either. They got all the right answers. That's a really early Transcendence out of the as well. It's a lot of damage on Doodoo. Sabagod comes in, and it is at the same time as the EMP, so he does at least rescue against that, but you would have rather kept the main tank alive. They have not got a counter trade against any one of Xavier. As I say, that Queen's getting low. They finish him off. Claire as well goes down. Unfortunately, that's with the sound barrier, which means that grab from THK does stick. They will find a lot more mileage now. Hengi, what can he get done here? Off to the side, the point cap goes over. Hengi's just got to toss that grab in. Can't even follow up on it himself, but Doodoo is in. Sound barrier's there, though, in response. And Jupiter still just not getting anything done. Claire finally respawned back in the team's sound barrier. Keeps the members who are alive still alive, but that's not really as many as they would like. Anakin trying to get work done on the Doomfist. This is so messy. Jupiter might be able to stick in this, but Xavier, they've got all the kills they need. It's going to be Jupiter getting forced off.
And this comes off the back of, again, a poor start from Jupiter. They lose so much early percentage points. They lose so many of those early fights off of some kind of slow play from them when they know there's a Sombra on the other side and they're taking too much time and losing members too early and not being able to get those counter trades. Once they do actually have that cap and they don't defend against the EMP properly, of what happens afterwards after that dust settles, even though they had a pretty decent rack up of percentage points, they needed enough space to be able to lose the fight, come back in, and still contest a point. But that just didn't happen for them. They need to have better early game, better towards the mid game as well, especially on now on Sanctum. It's the second round out of potential 3, and Xavier overall looking pretty decent. Looked like they could take this one 2-0 on the ball.
You got to say it was just really solid. Look, Jupiter's fundamentals are there for the most part, but a little bit slow on the play on some of these, so let's see if they can fix that up. Xavier going to be running something completely different here.
And Jupiter running the pretty standard thing on Sanctum, you know, the Winston 3-3, attempting the cliffside pretty early. Sort of a bunker for Xavier, backed by the Hanzo like you mentioned.
So, I mean, it's about as close to a bunker as you might want to run on control. I think it's maybe how we could categorize it. Good movement by Xavier. They need to be sure to not lose any members on the rotation back to the point, and that is exactly where they lose members because THK is too prepared for this. And Jupiter, despite the good work early, they don't get kills, and they end up losing the positioning as well. Sloppy on the rotation.
You can see what they're doing here as well for Xavier. They play quite defensively, wait for THK to find a decent flank, and just really threaten damage from off angles, which is why THK picked up a couple of kills there, did a lot of damage on Storm Arrows, and for Jupiter, didn't quite find their focus. Do they want to go for Queen on the Orisa, on where the bunker placement is? Do they want to try and find THK instead? Unfortunately for them, they found neither, and now Dragon Strike available into a Halt combo could do some real damage.
I mean, even just however they choose to rotate or approach, Dragon Strike is going to forcibly split this team, most likely. There it goes, straight out across the team, and there's that split. They either have to back up or drive into it. There's the Halt to catch 2 members back into the Dragon Strike, and this fight's already over as soon as it begins. That's also with Jupiter committing Doodoo-Doo's Primal Rage.
And honestly, I think this composition would benefit from a Ryan instead of a Winston for Jupiter. They could probably really brawl into the Orisa a lot more effectively there. A little bit more defense versus the Hanzo. The Winston's just not going to be able to provide you that. You have a space now where Xavier, once again, take a lot of early percentage points on the control point itself, coming up to a ton of ultimates, nearly 5 after the Dragon Strike, and Jupiter still just working on their first few.
And again, just looking a little bit lost, a little bit slow on the play, and a little bit unsure of how to actually approach these fights, what to really do here. Keep getting out-damaged in the rotation.
Some early pressure on the cap, but Doodoo instantly has to back out. So THK, after just using Dragon Strikes, nearly onto another one.
So the thing is, a spam comp, you can't just sit out in the open like that, especially not with the Reinhardt. Ken Mahororo already demeked THK. Second Dragon Strike does a lot of work in disrupting Jupiter once again. Xavier, they can just now move in on top of the point to where Jupiter are standing. And again, they already
got to reset quickly.
Spam, like they've committed to. Oh, jeez, that's so rough. It was looking like they weren't going to want to use Transcendence because they
can't reset now.
And then they lose more, and then still use Transcendence anyway. They're just not getting the kills they need. Getting one off the edge from THK is nice, but honestly, Hengi is really a man alone trying to do all this work, and with only Claire as the healer to back him up, it's looking like the beginning of the end for Jupiter.
And I think Jupiter just a little bit too keen to commit into losing fights, and you have the opportunity at about 80%, walk away, come back with your ultimates, but now desperation mode, no ults to play with, no members really alive on the point either.
And again, Ken Mahororo demeks so quickly there, just not able to absorb enough damage. It's not getting any kind of mileage out of ultimates, out of hero picks, out of anything, and looked utterly lost against the spam comp of Xavier.
And gotta be looking at their comp choice as well. Like I mentioned, Ryan over the Winston would be my preferred change for that team.
Especially if you're playing this scenario. The point.
Well, not only that, but if you really want to brawl into the other side, if you dive in as a Winston, you take a lot of arrow damage, you take a lot of damage from everything. You're also just taking damage overall because you don't have a shield up, you're not protecting yourself, you're not allowing the team to rotate properly. And across both rounds in the pool, you look at Village and you say, okay, it's basically 3-3 versus 3-3. We did see Alone Fills on the Sombra there. Pretty decent, doesn't blow you away, but is effective. Ends up being fairly one-sided. I don't really count the percentage points racked up by Jupiter as being enough to kind of secure a game for them. And then Sanctum is more or less the same thing, except Jupiter doesn't cap at all.
And it was really rough for Jupiter, but you've got to give credit to Xavier. We sort of, we said, look, are they going to be able to they still going to look good coming into this season when you consider they've lost a quote-unquote superstar player with all these other unknown factors. But you got to say, I mean, the boots were filled, right? Like, even if we're just comparing some simple, one-to-one comparisons, I think it's completely fair to say they were getting a lot more mileage out of their Xayah, for example. And just across the board, it does feel like Jupiter aren't quite going toe-to-toe yet.
Well, I think the game plan from Xavier has been pretty solid. You feel like they know what they're doing here. They know how to respond properly. They know what their overall game plan is.
Yeah.
You look at Jupiter, it's a little bit more wild. It's a little bit more chaotic in some ways. I'd say maybe that's quite generous on their side, but just the fact that they're so unwilling to back out of fights, and it did work out for them once on Village, which gave them that first cap, but otherwise it's, two sides of that same coin. The tails end of that would be what you see on Sanctum towards the end, where they could have chosen to back off, but they didn't. They decided to go in, and when it doesn't work out for them, it looks really bad.
And a couple of times as well, it seems like they're really holding on to ultimates. They're hesitant, especially support ultimates. They're like, maybe not. And then by the time they commit them, it's too late. Like, you need to have a bit of confidence in the execution of that. But oh well, it's over. That map at least.
Paris coming up next, though, Assault. So on this one, based on what we've seen so far, Bunker's been pretty popular. And we've already seen Orisa come out for Xavier on Sanctum of all places. Wouldn't be surprised if this is going to be the team that attempts this. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe Jupiter goes for this as well. But so far from what we've seen from Jupiter, definitely need to see a bit more cleaner gameplay, a little bit more cohesion around generally what the idea of the team is, generally what they're supposed to be doing. Because you are, like you mentioned, some hesitation there, I would say, not just in specific places, but across the board. And
also, if we're going to see Bunker, I want to see the DPS options for Jupiter, even if they're not actually used, because there are variations of that Bunker comp where you're going to need some DPSs realistically. Like, if you're really good at 3-3, you can just muscle your way in anyway, but I mean, just based off that alone, that first map, I think it's fair to say that Jupiter aren't quite good enough at 3-3 to just do that against a Bunker composition. And even then, a good Bunker composition can sometimes just deconstruct a really good 3-3 anyway.
And I think a really good 3-3 team definitely walks over Bunker. Maybe not walks over Bunker, but really makes it hard for Bunker to do anything.
They win like, I don't know, let's say 7 times out of 10.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that's too far off the mark there, but I think you do have to also look at Jupiter and say, Nepal not so hot. Maybe turn that ship around for Paris quite quickly and prove us otherwise.
It's cold climate in Nepal. South of Paris, south of France gets quite warm. Paris isn't quite there, but can get hot in Paris. It's hot when I was in Paris. That was mostly due to a heat wave. How hot does it get on Jupiter, I wonder? Is it one of the hot ones or one of the cold ones?
Like, on which part of Jupiter?
I guess it's a gas giant, so like on the surface.
The further down you get, the hotter it gets.
You'd certainly assume so. I like to imagine that like 10 kilometers into the atmosphere, there's suddenly just a cool breeze.
10 kilometers barely gets you through the first layer of clouds, I'm pretty sure.
But that's where the cool breeze is, right in the middle. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
What is cool is actually, you know what? I'm not going to project it. We're not going to see any Bunker just yet. There's got to be Sombra on both sides. I don't mind Bunker at all, by the way, just saying.
Yeah, no beef with Bunker. Alone fills on the Sombra did do decently when we saw it on Nepal. A little bit slow in the initial ult charge, but after that he was fine. Hengi's actually not going to take that mirror.
So no DPSs either. So what we're going to just see is basically what we saw in Village again. And for Jupiter, it gives them an opportunity to kind of rewrite the result of Nepal, metaphorically, not literally.
This is wrap around here from Jupiter. They've got a window here. Alone fills. This first bit is the real tough part, and looks like they've steered through the worst of it with the frag on Amakin. Good counter trade though onto Bellows, so Jupiter's still very much in this and pressuring Queen down just a little as they take a bit of movement onto the point.
And you can see as well, Jupiter actually wanted to rotate onto point earlier, but they were forced to engage, and now losing more members. This is probably the pushover.
Sabagot dying actually before Doodoo was even worse, because then there's no way he survives, right? Doodoo was already on low health, and I mean, how many times is that going to keep happening, right? Spam damage on the tanks of Jupiter not really getting answered for, and eventually one or more of them just dies.
And this is where I look at players like Tay, because he knocks a lot of members mid-rotation on the Jupiter side to force then, okay, we're going to fight on the ground. Ambikin's kind of caught out. It's already a 6v5. They complete the game plan anyway. They go on top of the point. Actually get 33.9%, which is at least 1 tick. So wouldn't say it's the worst push ever, but does still now reset them to start again and re-attempt to get on top of that point. And Also, Lone Phils is going to be the guy to watch.
That's the thing, he's got the ultimate that he needs, he commits it, gets 4 members, Sabagod's Transcendence comes up, I mean...
It is even.
It's even trades, but Xavier do come up on a lot of other ultimates, so it's still going to be a tough ask for Jupiter. They do have closer respawns, though. They can pick up some kills here as they start moving towards the point.
You do want to force Xavier's ultimates out, and that's Earthshatter already. THK's got to be next. If you get those ultimates out, then you still lose. Not the end of the world.
I think THK is an opportunity here, though, because Jupiter don't actually have a defensive ultimate. Double grabs out. Tay's got a sound barrier, Claire does not, but the damage hasn't been there. As I say, that Hengi gets picked and Claire hacks, means he's low. And Xavier have rallied off the back of that, but a Shatter could turn it around. No, it will not. Doo-doo-doo goes down, and Xavier really leveraged that slight defensive ultimate advantage.
I will say that final Shatter was definitely overcommitment. The double grabs, maybe there was an opportunity. Maybe Hengi could have got a lot more value out of that. He was one discorded, so immediately after he ate a grab himself and he was caught in one by Tay, he goes down first. After that, Jupiter should say, okay, this is enough, now we can back up, we got the ultimate, we walk away, keep the Earth Shatter, but they throw the Shatter away, so now doesn't feel so good for them going to the next attempt.
Moving around once again, Lone Phil still waiting for that next EMP. It's close enough that he'll likely have it over the course of this fight, unless maybe he's the first pick. That's already big opening spam damage. Kenma Hororo throws up self-destruct, mostly just to take some pressure off the team.
Well, they haven't got the space.
That's nice, though, finding THK, and suddenly Jupiter ends up kind of paying off for them, looking to get the wrap around on Lone Phil's has EMP now.
This is the thing where Xavier technically still in this. They have defensive options, offensive options. Here it is.
Ooh, sound barrier not quick enough to save Doo-Doo-Doo. Xavier going to commit everything they can here because they recognize the numbers deficit, which they have at least even up with Doo-Doo-Doo going down. But Jupiter want to stay in this. The rest of the members kept alive, and Sabagod uses the Transcendence. They need to get the kills, though. If Xavier are allowed to just back off and push back in again, they could still win this. This time, though, Jupiter are starting to finish off these members of Xavier, and off the back of that, should be able to finish this point.
And this is where that initial kill onto THK is so valuable, as he now finally returns just to give himself to the cause of Jupiter's cap and taking the 6v5. And then absorbing the EMP. Yes, they lost a member, but that's always going to happen when sound barrier is the response. It's not going to be quick enough. They needed the Transcendence, which was just a little bit off. And then Jupiter able to sort of outscale and towards the later parts of that fight. They even have a reinforcement advantage if they really need to go into that. Well, you walk into the space now where they finally do cap, but it took them until overtime. You have to expect this has to be a really big push now. Huge momentum push onto B if they want to make any progress.
The thing is, they got the right ults for it. They've already found B as well. Xavier will have an EMP coming up soon, with Jupiter not really having a good defense unless the Lone Phils goes down. He's still alive for now. They need to have members to follow up on a potential EMP. They've all survived for the time being, so there goes the EMP onto 5 out of 6 members. CHK still goes down, but here finally come the trades for Xavier. They do lose a lot of members, but with the closer respawns, plus a nice Earth Shatter out of Queen to help close off these last few kills, they are going to hold on against the snowball push.
And so close as well. Jupiter, I mean, they looking for that first take, not quite there. Taya's going to get that final touch onto Kemo Hororo as well as he attempts to reset. The EMP coming in, Earth Shatter to secure things. There is a world where, to be fair, they could have kept the Earth Shatter, but they really wanted to make sure they were going to win that fight.
Does use the EMPs. There's a bit of downtime here. And Jupiter will have both support ultimates most likely, plus a grab. So there is still a lot of potential in Jupiter right now.
And V is going to have the Transcendence available. So there will be defense versus the eventual Graviton Surge.
Self-destruct just kind of lobbed up, and Kenma Hororo can't remech as he is hacked out. That does really slow Jupiter down. Finally gets back in it now. He has the answer to that grab. Still lose Tay, but Amican's a good counter trade, and Jupiter not willing to commit support ultimates just yet. They might need to commit them before too long, because honestly, they're starting to take a lot of damage. Kenma Hororo demech, Doo-Doo-Doo's low. They don't rescue Kenma Hororo, and Sabagod might have pulled the trigger too late. Jupiter are still coming up a better end of these kills. But if Xavier can get a good respawn in here, if they can buy some time, they might still reinforce. Jupiter, though, staying on top of the fight for now.
They're still looking for their first tech, though. And Xavier, they do still have a Shadow. Queen needs to live.
Ooh, and they bump the shield up as the Shadow comes down. It's enough to find Claire around the side. Bello on the Doofus doing that, but goes down. Now here's the grab. No defensive ultimate to answer, and an EMP laid on top. They're still getting some kills through, though. Xavier have not finished off these members despite the grab, despite the Transcendence, now Transcendence coming through. I'll say despite the EMP, and Jupiter looking good.
And finally, they get a tick. Finally, they're about to get 2 ticks. You're starting to believe now, okay, Jupiter should finally be able to camp. V is going to stall, but stall is going to be the only thing they'll get. They don't have enough members to properly contest.
Killing Sabagot is nice in that it takes the Discord Orb option off the table, but honestly, there's still enough damage, enough focus fire out of Jupiter. It does feel like they've managed to get Xavier to that breaking point now. They're trickling on. They're burning time off the clock, which is still something. Solo grab on Bello to finish him off, while Tay is still in the ice cube. Pops out, goes down, and it's going to be Jupiter capping the point.
Took a long time, unfortunately, and it was a very contentious point where various moments you do also think Xavier can hold on here. Xavier can turn things around. They have some ults to play with. They just got to land these properly. What you do have to say on the Jupiter side is this is another sort of symptom of them just wanting to stay in. And of course, this time it does work out again. When it works out, it looks pretty decent. It looks pretty difficult. It looks almost miraculous in some cases. We look at the supports again, and you're in a position where you've already dropped a couple of members. Then you see the Transcendence come out. And honestly, to me, that looks like a case of the team not really being on the same page of, are we actually staying here or are we leaving? Because it felt like to me the team wanted to reset. They got some ultimates out of Xavier. They were down a couple of members and they're like thinking at that point, okay, this is where you probably just want to back out and go for the next push. But at the same time, they got trades. They were getting kills as well. They got counter trades. And now they're thinking, wait a minute, do we just want to stay in this? They pull the trigger on that one, but they've also already lost a member. So it's a little bit of both sides. It's not quite clean. It feels quite messy. It's very chaotic, but out of the chaos, Jupiter end up taking both points. So this time, and maybe only this time, we'll have to see, it does work out.
Bit of an interesting situation now for Xavier. This kind of could go either way, right? They have a great opportunity to come into a time bank with a big advantage if they can get some high tempo pushes. Remember, Jupiter lost a lot of time on A and then a chunk more on B, but also, both of those are potentially good points to anchor a defense and create a full hold.
I'll add something else as well. I think Xavier Esports could have backed off the point early, given away 2 ticks, waited for all their respawners, then play their EMP issue. It's a lot of ifs for hindsight 2020 Xavier Esports. If they can do well enough on their attack and push us to a time bank, then maybe it won't matter anyway.
So now, slow approach from Xavier. Similar game plan here. They want to work around Alone Phil's EMP, which does mean this first skirmish is the hardest.
It's already a good, successful rotation. It's actually Jupiter on the low ground, attempting to refight for control. They might actually get a member here.
They have got a lot of members low and haven't taken too much pressure themselves, but unfortunately no finish off, and Xavier have been able to rotate away and top those members off.
It's that right side rotation versus left side rotation, attacker's perspective. The right side so far working well for Xavier, just looking for an opening here. Lone Phil's got to be very careful.
As the translocate away. Did take the attention of Jupiter, which allowed some damage to go through, but they've healed it back up by now, so it's now starting to get into territory where first ultimates could be decided.
You got to look at V here, because if he gets Transcendence, they can rush in.
Oh, especially with Sabagot down, but they get the counter trade, and that's also the off the table, which was, like you said, the potential high impact ult.
It is still even, though.
Transcendence.
Look at Tay now, EMP available. This has to be Xavier pushing in. No excuses.
They also have the respawn advantage, and that's a nice EMP, already getting the damage out of Doodoo. Claire's got a sound barrier, but chosen to not commit it yet. They maybe want to get a kill first. They're deciding whether or not they want to commit too much to this fight. They've decided no.
Jupiter probably back out.
Down. Still commit.
Just as I say that.
I mean, what's the deal? Why then? Why not earlier? Ken Mohorora was already going to lose the mech. Why not do it to save Hengi? Why not do it to try save Doodoo? And Xavier end up not having to use any more ultimates and even get most of the way back to an EMP, as well as getting the cap.
I'll say it like this. When the EMP dropped, Sabagot was dead. Claire was on 97%, doesn't have it yet. That's okay. Then they lose a member, kind of expected. But then they lose Hengi as well. That's when you're thinking, if you didn't use Sound Barrier to save him, you probably shouldn't be using it at all now. You should probably be backing out. Again, another time when we just see Jupiter weirdly kind of half commit. They still have 5 other ultimates, which should tell you the B defense should be okay, but Alone Phil's nearly on the EMP could really put a spanner in the works.
And that's the thing, when you have 5 ultimates and the enemy here has EMP, you have no ultimates. It's also probably going to be Transcendence answering THK's grab, but it wasn't, so that's nice. That means Sabagot still has that available for a potential EMP. No one dead just yet, and Jupiter with an ultimate advantage.
But he was almost in trouble. Both him and Alone Phil took a lot of damage, so neither EMP or Transcendence being pressured out just yet. soft reset here. Both teams just taking a bit of a breather as they go in for the next punch-up.
Alone Phils is already looking for the angle. Aids some spam damage, commits it. Sabagod's in with the answer. Doodadoo's already dead, though. Didn't quite get there in time, and the Shatter is able to land out largely for free with Doodadoo down. And Jupiter, despite having all the right tools and all the right answers, they don't quite land him. And Xavier really connecting well on a lot of the ultimates they had at their disposal. The EMP is one thing, but the Earth Shatter as well. The target prioritization and selection. Jupiter very much on the back foot. Shatter out from Doodadoo's really to no or end, and looking like all she wrote here.
And you're looking at a stage where, okay, it's going to be a huge time bank for Xavier, not a really good one for Jupiter. Depends on how much longer Jupiter can hold on to, and the answer quite clear on your screens now, and you start thinking about the scenario playing out. It's always going to come down to EMP versus Transcendent. That is always going to be what that final engagement looks like. Here's how it actually plays out. EMP drops. Doodadoo's obviously going to get caught by that one. Sabagod does have Transcendence, uses it straight away, but is so far away that it doesn't manage to reach his main tank in time. Doodadoo ends up going down. Here's another scenario where, unfortunately, based on how this kind of interaction works, you do have to hide, but you also can use line of sight. So imagine a world where if you are playing closer to your own spawn doors, maybe the EMP comes out closer, you're slightly closer. Maybe you play the line of sight, you hid behind a wall instead of just using pure distance. Then you do get your main tank, to your main tank in time rather. But for Jupiter, it was always going to be hard. They didn't have any picks to work with. They didn't quite find other advantages. They just had to rely on Transcendence versus EMP, and this time EMP wins out.
And that was after they did everything right. They were able to save the Transcendence through the earlier grab from THK, but unfortunately the second part of the game plan not panning out there for Jupiter. Now 1:11 on the clock. It's effectively a one and done as far as capping both A and indeed if they do cap B, it's
1 second off of a 4-time time bank. Like 4 times as much.
You're dead right. That's nuts. If it was 4:44 for Xavier, you're dead right. Or even 1:10 for Jupiter, even less than that. So, they've maybe got 1.5 pushes here, 2 if they're quick, but they were slow in their first one last time around, so let's see if they speed things up.
Now, I do like Sabagod on the Ana here. They know with the time available, they're probably not going to get a Transcendence very quickly, so depend on the Sleep Darts and the Bionades versus the Sombra.
Alone Phils, though, already getting a lot of ult charge in this early juncture. Oh, Doodadoo's just eating so much pressure.
Yeah, but so is Queen.
Nice catch, and there we go. The as well getting picked off around the side. So Jupiter have kind of cracked this one, just slightly higher pace of play and not quite losing the tanks this time around. I think part of that is actually having the Ana to pump the extra healing in did really help out. Now, really late stagger kill on Alone Phils.
So this should be now aggressing the cap as well. They're finally on there, 1 tick going through. Jupiter know they've got this one. Xavier have also kind of done the damage for B as well. You have to look at where the EMP's at. Lone Phils, check that one off the board because EMP is available now for B. They just have to make sure there is not a single tick onto B, and Xavier can put themselves in a very winnable position for taking Paris.
Jupiter don't have a lot to work with. They don't have a defensive option against the EMP. They also don't have an aggressive option with the Nano Boost or indeed any other ultimates.
Once they do get the Nano Boost, which is the quickest one here, they pop it onto Doodadoo as the EMP comes down, and hopefully he does a lot.
Absolutely disgusting from Alone Phils. That is all 6, 15 seconds on the clock, and not a single tick will be given up. That is a brilliant hold from Xavier Esports, and now they poise themselves well for what should be a far better offense in their time bank. 4:43 on the clock to only get a third of B. This is looking very doable for Xavier.
And now you just got to think about what could have been an actual push onto B, but caught in rotation seems to be very consistent concerning Xavier into Jupiter. Jupiter obviously on the receiving end of that all the time. EMP just gets all 6 members, and there was a game plan there. Okay, pop the Nano Boost in, hope for the best, but just didn't quite have it this time around. You do also have to consider that capping A at all is a pretty decent result for Jupiter because they struggled quite a bit on that, on their initial attacking phase before we got the time back this time around. They at least have something to work with. If we go to B, they'll be in a draw scenario, which doesn't give them a win anymore in Paris. So everything they got to do has to happen on A.
That is what Jupiter is staring down the barrel of. Again, going to roll out here with an Ana, and I do still like this. They're banking on getting good sleep darts, getting good value out of bio grenades as Xavier rotate and approach. But Alone Fills will still always be a threat with only Claire's sound barrier.
I'll tell you what, though, outside of EMP, Sabagod needs to do a lot of work, and we've known him to be a pretty decent Ana player from last season. Really on, I would say, on top of the leaderboards, next to guys like Inin77, who's probably the really good standout Ana player from last season now.
Gold standard of the region, at least, Inin77. Savagod, maybe a silver standard. Sterling Silver Savagod.
You also noticed the Winston start for Doodoo as well. I think he's feeling maybe somewhat that there may be DPS run from Xavier and doesn't want to take the risk there. So this composition, while being more versatile, is unfortunately a losing matchup versus Queen on the Rhine.
Yeah, they need to get a lot of value aggressing onto these rotating members of Xavier, but so far it's Jupiter taking more damage than they're dishing out.
And again, rotations from Xavier have just been better. They're already about to get on top of the point. Haven't lost anyone, haven't taken that much damage. Doodoo's doing his best.
Oh, but there it is.
Not good enough, though.
Just too much spam damage. The bio grenade that was trying to heal him up didn't actually collect any members of Xavier. If it had, that could have been a different story. That could be Doodoo bursting someone down, but instead the shoes on the other foot and Xavier have absolutely no trouble. And again, like you said, the rotations are slicker. The execution from Jupiter on the game plan just falls short.
And we're doing two types of rotations here. First of all, for Xavier, on their attacker's perspective, they do the right side one, over the bridge, easy. Now they do the left side one. Again, I don't know about easy. Well, it seems pretty easy because they got the early kill, but now they're straight on to B.
Certainly seem to have no trouble.
Exactly. Now they're on to B. Already ultimates online, almost online. I should probably say EMP will be probably the one that shuts the lid, shuts the door closed.
Yeah, and much like on Jupiter's attack in the time bank, EMP going to be coming up with Claire miles away from the only tool they have against it. They have the immortality fields, which could help if Anakin doesn't get caught in the EMP. I think that's actually why they're running the Baptiste here.
Oh, that's big pick. There was a primal there as well. He might have gotten hacked.
Maybe. Keeps happening, man. That means Primal is to go on to someone else, goes on to Ken Mohororo, who just gets solo Earth Shattered so they can keep that out of the fight. There's the EMP, and they're already off the point. So Xavier picking that one up without really breaking a sweat, I must say. So with that 2-0 up in the series, and I mean, Jupiter look outclassed right now.
And this is the kind of matchup where last season, you would say Jupiter probably, in my mind, a third-place team, and Xavier would have been your fourth-place team there with Padapan. This time around, seems like Jupiter is maybe sliding a little bit further down the rankings, and we have to kind of maybe flip the narrative upside down, where we thought initially maybe Xavier was going to be the team within striking distance for the Trials team. Xavier on paper, a lot of unknowns here, new members, losing Padapan, everything looks stacked against them. But now seeing this, seeing how they're actually playing, seeing the result versus Jupiter, I think Xavier have actually stepped up quite a bit, and Jupiter got a lot of questions to answer.
I mean, it's the GOATs play. It's the 3-3. You know, we talked about teams that were 3-3 teams last season that weren't quite up to snuff. Certainly, there were other 3-3 teams better than them. You know, those that have chosen to preserve that identity. Well, Xavier is one of them, and they seem to have done it with far more success than the other two teams so far that have tried to do that in Global Esports and Jupiter.
I would even say that Xavier have kind of not just preserved, because I would also say, based on, and this is, by the way, that opening group kill to Doodoo, but I would even say that based on, because they were running Padapan last season, they still had a lot of cases where they thought, okay, put him on a DPS, let's do that. Now that they've kind of let go of what I'll call a crutch, where it's like, okay, you have this, you feel like you need to use it. Now that you don't have that, you can just do your other things, and you can let everyone else shine on the team. THK has actually had a pretty good game.
Really?
Hanzo was very notable. Alone Phil's on the Sombra. I mean, again, doesn't super wow you, but does the job, like gets the job done every time.
Feels like
that's all you kind of need to get yourself across the line. And I mean, twice now in a row, it's 1-0, 1-0, 2-0 up in the series. You've definitely got yourself across the line.
I mean, Alone Phil's feels like a really natural fit on the Sombra, I have to say. And, you know, it's one of the players we maybe had more questions about compared to
Alone,
some
he
others.
fills the team.
Exactly, but tell you what it might do is if Jupiter do go on to lose this, does make Japan Bowl next week that much more hype.
Well, we talked about being within striking distance for Trials teams, but that's still something to look forward to later down the line. Something to look forward to a little bit closer is the conclusion of this current series. We will be taking a break, but when we come back, does Jupiter bring it back? Does Xavier finish the game off? Find out right after this.